Welcome back to the third part of the game tutorial series. My name is Ryan Gryziak, and in this tutorial we're going to be talking in depth about game properties as well as finishing up creating our gems. Let's get started. If we move into our scene, we're going to create the gem from a simple cube. So we're just going to add one to the scene, scale it down, go into edit mode, and we're going to grab the corner vertices and just stretch them out. And I found that it does a great job creating a gem-like shape with its different faces. Once the simple shape has been achieved, I'm going to tab out of edit mode, and I'm going to add a material to this gem, and I'm going to call this gem outer, and this material is going to give it some yellow and a bit of transparency to allow it to be seen through. So if you scroll down to the bottom, you'll see this transparency tab, and if you select it and twirl down the menu, you'll see that there's this alpha at 1, and that means that you cannot see through this object. But if I dial this back to say 0.5, you'll begin to see through this object. Now, it's hard to see with this red background, but what we're going to do is create an inner shape that you will be able to see once this is transparent. So if we scroll up here, I'm just going to turn down the specular, turn up the hardness a bit, and I'm going to take this, I'm going to duplicate it, I'm going to go into wireframe mode and just scale this down, and you'll see that it's scaling down quite nicely, and this is going to be our core of the gem. And you'll see that if you go back to Z, you actually can't see the gem in the middle, even in textured mode. But what happens is when you deselect this, you will then be able to see the gem on the inside. I'm going to go back into wireframe, select this, and I'm going to click this number 2, which will duplicate the material for this one, so I can have a different material. I'm going to call this gem inner, and this will just give, I want to give this a hot core to the center. So I'm going to turn up the emit value to 1. I'm going to turn down the yellow amount a tiny bit, and for the transparency I'm just going to keep it as is. And you'll see that if I switch over to textured mode and deselect it, we have the hot white core in the middle. Now I'm going to take the inner core and the outer core and push Ctrl J, which will join the two meshes together. That's looking really nice. I'm going to just scale this down to the appropriate size for our character. Maybe pull it down a bit. And now that we have the gem completed, I'm going to start creating the game properties for this gem. Now I'm going to create a simple one to start out. I'm going to add an always sensor and a motion sensor. And this is just going to allow the gem to spin slowly around the Z axis. And this will just give a bit more variety to this gem. If you push P, you'll see that it spins slowly. Once that's completed, I'm going to start creating what's going to happen when our character touches the gem. So I'm going to go under sensors and add a touch sensor, and this will activate when our player touches it. So right now, if character or player material is not under here, so what we need to do is go over to our sphere and go to the top here and just call this player. And this will help us to identify it when we select it under the material. And this means no other objects can really affect this gem. I'm going to go over to the actuators And when this touches it, we want it to, you'll see an edit object here, we want it to delete or end the object. If we connect these up, you'll see that if we go into our camera view mode, push P, if we go over to our gem, it will delete it. It's looking good. Now, the thing about this is, even though we've deleted the gem, our player doesn't know that it actually doesn't exist anymore. So we want to be able to send a message to this player. And to do that, we're going to create an actuator called message. And this will allow us to send a signal to our player to say that it's now been deleted. Now if we try to select it under here, you'll see that it can be hard to tell it apart, especially in large scenes. So I'm going to go over to our player, scroll down, and just name this player. And we can select it from the drop down menu, and the subject is going to be gem. I'm going to then connect it to the touch sensor. So when the touch sensor is activated, it ends the object and sends a message to our player. I'm going to twirl this down, and now we need to be able to receive it on this end. So I'm going to add a receiver, which is also called message, and I'm going to add a property. Now the message, we need to type in the subject, which is over here, which is called gem. And what do we want to do when we get that message? We want to then add, say, a counter to our scene. So when we collect about 3 gems, we could then end the scene. And to do this, we will add a game property over here, change this to integer, call it gem underscore count, and we're going to keep this at 0. Now when we receive this message called gem, we're going to connect it to the property actuator, and we're going to add a value of 1 to it. And now we need to find the property we're going to do by selecting here. You'll see that our gem count is the property over here, and that will add 1 to the scene. Now we're not going to be really able to tell much of a difference until we add more gems and put up something that will activate when the count equals 3. So I'm going to take this gem, I'm going to duplicate it, I'm going to move it over to this corner over here, duplicate it again, and move it to the top of our ramp here. I'm also going to go to the top view and just rotate these in a bit more different directions, since they're all going to rotate around the same speed. And we're going to select our player again, and we're going to add a sensor, which is then going to take this property when it's 3 and end the scene. So to do this, I'm going to add a sensor here, go down to property, and we're going to say when this gem count equals a value of 3, we will then end or quit the scene, ending our game. So I'm going to add an actuator called game, and I'm going to then click quit game, and this will completely stop and end the game. Now let's see if this is going to work. I'm going to go into the camera view, and I'm going to hit P, or you can start it over here in the render settings or the scene settings and push start, and you'll see that our gems are spinning. We come over here, collect that gem, and if we go to the top of a ramp, collect that gem, the scene or game is over. And that looks pretty good. We've got our player interacting with our gems, and it ends the game when it's all finished. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it. My name is Ryan Gryziak, and I'll see you next time.